They begged for salvation. What they got was us. The transmission was old, warped, fragmented by radiation and time. It drifted through the void for cycles, across dead systems and quiet stars, until the Deathworlders found it. And Deathworlders, as every species learned to late, always answer. The star known as Velharn once burned bright above a cradle of emerald oceans and crystalline spires. Now, it glowed dull behind a haze of orbital wreckage. Shattered cities spinning like skeletal rings, their people long gone or worse. The planet below was not silent. It was screaming. Inside the command cradle of the DSV Cathedra, Mila Voss stood motionless, eyes locked on the ghostly feed. Pale blue light from the display shimmered across her scarred face. As the last known images from Velharn played on repeat, a chorus of insectoid shrieks, flames licking through spires, and one desperate word, over and over again, help. Verified origin, murmured her comms officer, a synth-born named Lex. Signal is legitimate. No traps. No known active resistance planets in this sector. Velharn fell 7 years ago. Mila said nothing. Behind her, the bridge crew, Deathworlders all, moved with silent purpose. These were humans born not of Earth, but of her remnants, children of iron moons, acid storms, and collapsing colonies. Their ancestors had once called themselves survivors. Now, they were avengers. Dispatch full fleet recon. Give me eyes from orbit to core, and prep the Black Doctrine. Lex flinched, only slightly. Black Doctrine? Captain, that's for extinction-level threats. That is what we're here for. Mila Voss had fought in 17 campaigns. She had seen entire biospheres burn for peace. She had lost her sister in the siege of Dravik, her breath, to lunar gas and crying, and her right arm to a creature that fed on nuclear light. The arm she wore now was obsidian steel, etched with the names of her fallen. But something about Velharn twisted her gut. It wasn't just the message. It was the tone. The aliens hadn't screamed in rage. They had wept. The first recon drone entered low orbit and died. One frame. That's all it sent before its feed cut. A single, blurred image. It showed something. Not machines. Not soldiers. Something that crawled in shadows that shouldn't exist. Something that bent light and logic. Something that waited. Fleet AI Corrin's voice filled the bridge, emotionless and calm. Confirmed. Apex Tier Class unknown entity. Planetfall inadvisable. Mila stared at the frozen image. Tentacles? No. Threads. Nerve light. An architecture of flesh wrapped in hate. Something that didn't evolve. It arrived. Reverse optical spectrum. She ordered. The image flickered, then snapped into clarity. The being stood amidst millions of the dead, and it was looking straight at the drone. Lex whispered, by the black sky, it sees. Mila turned. Her voice was steady, iron-willed. We came to answer a call. We're not leaving until we send an answer back. The cathedra initiated silent descent. As it breached Velharn's upper atmosphere, something old stirred in the ash. Below, the cities were not empty. They were entombed. Alien towers pulsed. Faintly, overgrown with strange organic matter. Biological filaments stretched between collapsed temples, and burned-out bunkers like webs spun across time. One of the bridge crew gasped. There are still life signs down there. That should have been good news. It wasn't, because the signals were repeating. No change in pattern. No fluctuation in heat, heart, or will. Clones, someone offered. Lex shook his head slowly. Puppets, as Mila watched the lifeless loop of trapped minds below. The realization formed like ice in her veins. This wasn't a war. It was a harvest. Whoever, whatever, had answered Velharn's SOS had come not to help, but to feed. To wear the survivors like skins of memory. To trap their last breath in a looping mockery of life. This thing, it didn't want them dead. It wanted them remembering. Mila's grip on the console tightened. Begin Black Doctrine sequencing. We go unarmed for godhood. Captain, Lex said again, quietly. Why would a race send an SOS across galaxies and not know what would answer back? Mila's eyes burned. Maybe they did. Maybe they hoped it would be us. The cathedral broke cloud cover, and below, across the broken horizon, the thing that had devoured Velharn opened its eyes. They called it the Sire of Echoes, not because it spoke, but because it repeated what others had once screamed. Velharn's surface was a graveyard with breath. Towers bent at unnatural angles, as if trying to flee the soil. The atmosphere shimmered. infected with invisible frequencies that made human implants glitch and buzz in their skulls. Even hardened veterans felt it, a pressure, ancient and wrong. Pressing behind their eyes, Mila Voss led the first breach team herself. 7 Death Worlders descended in kinetic drop pods, punching through layers of bioash and broken steel. What was once a capital city lay half digested. Skyscrapers now pulsed like lungs. Roads twitched underfoot. The ground was not ground. It was memory, fed upon. Status, Mila snapped over comms. Sergeant Kale, clean drop. Systems intact. Rourke, motion south sector, non-hostile, possibly bait. Echo 3, hearing something. Cap, it's speaking in my mother's voice. Mila froze. Repeat. There was a pause, then static. Then a voice, not robotic, not alien, familiar. Mila, don't leave me here. It was her sister, Talia Voss, dead 11 years. She closed her eyes, just for a second. Calm discipline. Ignore the phantoms. But inside, she was shaking. They moved as one, the breach team slicing through the corpse city with ruthless precision. No talking, no hesitation, every footfall measured, every corner watched. And still, it wasn't fast enough. They came upon the first shell. It looked like a Velharn noble, frozen mid-scream, draped in ceremonial armor fused to its own spine. But the face that blinked, twitched, a whisper escaped its lips. Thank you for coming. Rourke raised his weapon. Permission. To end it, Captain. No, Mila said grimly. We study it. Kale stepped forward with a scanner. Heartbeat present. Neural signature splintered across multiple time echoes. It's looping its own death. On purpose. It's being kept here. Why? Rourke asked, voice shaking. Why keep them half alive? Lex's voice came through their comms from orbit, grim and quiet. It doesn't conquer. It doesn't kill. It preserves trauma. That's what the signal was. Not a call for help, a recording, an offering. It feeds on legacy. Mila stared into the hollow eyes of the noble, feeling that terrible click of understanding. This wasn't war. This was worship. Through pain, an hour later, they found the sire's nest. It wasn't hidden. It wanted them to find it. A vast cathedral of bone and light stood in the crater where Velharn's capital once gleamed. Massive spires, part organic, part architectural, hung with frequencies that twisted stomachs and minds all around. Husks knelt in silent reverence, not dead, not alive, a choir of silence. The sire stood at the center, no legs, no arms. It hung like a star-born marionette from filaments of living light, connected to the structures around it. Its form was fluid, shifting, a tapestry of faces, species, screams, and as Mila stepped forward, its form stabilized. It became her sister. You left me, Mila. Kale shouted, stand down. It's baiting you. But Mila didn't. Raise her rifle. Not yet. The thing spoke again, not aloud, but inside them. You burn. You run. You kill. But you always remember. So we devour what you love most. Then came the scream, not physical, but psychic, a flood of memories not their own. Velharn's last breath. Whole generations dying in slow motion, hope curdling into worship. Galaxies worth of death dreams, pressed into their minds like molten branding irons. Kale fell. Rourke screamed. One of the squad vomited blood through their rebreather. Only Mila remained standing. Barely, she activated the emergency extraction beacon, stabbing it into the pulsing ground. Lex, get us out. Static. Lex then. Finally, we've got you. Brace for orbital pull. The light swallowed. Them. Back on the cathedra, medics worked in silence. Kale had gone blind. Rourke couldn't stop shaking. Echo 3 was comatose. Mila refused treatment. She marched to the war chamber, blood on her uniform, helmet still tucked under her arm, like a soldier from another age. Lex met her there, eyes haunted, voice cold. We shouldn't go back. We have to, Mila said. Lex's face twisted. You saw what it does. I did, she whispered, and I finally understand. She activated the holomap. Dozens of old red markers bloomed to life, other worlds, dead colonies, forgotten battlefields. Every one of them had sent a signal just like Velharn. The sire didn't hunt. It followed our grief, and we had given it a trail across the stars. Lex asked the question that hung over them all. How do you fight something that doesn't want to kill you? Just remember you forever. Mila Voss turned toward the display. And for the first time since they arrived in this cursed system, she smiled, not with joy, but with war. You don't give it a memory. She set coordinates manually. Ancient Earth protocol. One-word pulse read on screen. Oblivion. The sire feeds on memory, so we gave it something that could never swallow our fury. The Deathworlder fleet did not retreat. They disappeared. 3,000 vessels went dark, no emissions, no transmissions, no digital trace. They cloaked themselves in silence, drifting like ghosts just beyond Velharn's horizon. From orbit, it looked as though the fleet had fled, but silence was not surrender. It was the beginning of war. In the silent core of the cathedra, deep within subdeck 16, Mila stood before an object even her crew whispered about with reverence, the Ember Protocol. A weapon not forged but remembered. It had no single form, only a function, to erase something so completely from space, time, and thought that even the sire would choke on the void left behind. The Ember Protocol had never been used. It required more than energy. It required sacrifice. Mila placed her palm on the obsidian panel, feeling the pulse of ancient engines stir beneath her fingertips. A voice, hollow and wise, filled the chamber. Are you prepared to erase even memory? Yes, she said. Then forget who you are. Back in the war chamber, Lex awaited her return with data streaming across translucent walls. The thing's adapting. It's growing new nodes across the old Velharn net. We're estimating planetary consciousness now. It's not a mind, she corrected. It's a mausoleum that thinks. Kale, pale and still recovering, limped. And behind them, you really think we can delete it? I mean, not kill it, not burn it, but erase it? No, Mila said. I think it's already delayed to win the way we want. Lex looked up. Then what's the plan? We do what humans do best. Kale nodded grimly. We make it hurt. The plan was heresy to the galaxy. Use old Earth tech, neural, mirage grenades, empathy disruptors, void sequence nukes banned even by the Deathworlder conventions. But this war was beyond rules. It was soul warfare, memory versus oblivion, pain versus defiance. They started with the Scream Towers. Dozens of spires around Velharn's core that rebroadcast the final cries of its people. The sire fed from them like roots drawing from rot. Mila led the first strike herself. 7 drop pods launched again, only this time. They carried no names, no ident tags. The pods landed with silent thunder. A team of specialists disembarked, carrying gear wrapped in black mesh and myth. They didn't speak. They didn't look up. Each one knew they wouldn't be returning. Inside Tower Zero, Mila and Kale found their way through shifting corridors of flesh metal. The walls bled. The echoes laughed. They moved fast. They reached the central stalk, planted the void seed, and activated the Ember Shard. Kale grinned through the pain. Captain, you sure this'll work? No, she said. But we'll make sure it remembers this moment, right before we tear its throat out. She slammed the charge. Light poured through reality like a scream cutting through bone. Tower Zero collapsed in a flash of blankness. Not fire, not ash, just nothing. The kind of nothing that hurts. Lex watched from orbit as the tower vanished from the planet's memory web. The sire reacted violently. The entire planet twitched. Mountains wept. Oceans reversed. Thousands of husk thralls burst like overripe fruit. Then came the first ripple, a shudder in the mind space around the planet. Not rage, not fear. Confusion. The sire had never lost memory before. Lex turned to the remaining officers on the bridge. Ready all Ember teams. It's working. Across Velharn, black ships dropped silent payloads. Where they landed, memories unraveled. The sire's lattice began to fracture. It fought back, of course. Psychic storms screamed through the stars. Some Deathworlders clawed their own eyes out. Others heard their loved ones die a second time. But they held. One soldier, moments before death, carved into his helmet. You may remember our screams. But we chose to scream. Mila barely made it back to the cathedra. Her pulse was failing. Lungs shredded from the tower's defense spines. Lex pulled her from the medbay slab and connected her directly to the fleet link. You're the last one who can finish the Ember sequence. She coughed blood. Is the planet weakening? Lex nodded. Its nodes are unraveling, but it's not dying. It's remembering faster, like it knows what we're trying to do. Mila steadied herself. Then we do the unthinkable. Kale, patched but walking, entered. Captain, you can't mean I do. She brought up an old Earth relic. From storage, Eidolon Prime. An artificial black hole. A singularity built not to consume matter, but meaning. No records, no wreckage, no gravestones. Just gone. Lex stared at it like one might a god. That thing erases civilizations. Mila met his gaze, exactly as the final fleet vessels converged above Velharn. The Sire pulsed its final weapon, not a cannon, not a fleet, but a memory. Across every Deathworlder ship, their deepest regrets flooded back. Dead lovers, failed missions, lost homes, forgotten names. Some wept, some screamed, some broke. But not Mila. She stood on the bridge, blood drying. In her hair, fire in her eyes. She smiled and whispered, "Then remember this." She deployed the Eidolon Prime, and the stars shivered. We thought the Eidolon would silence it, but instead, it spoke our names back. When Eidolon Prime detonated above Velharn, the galaxy blinked. A singularity forged not to destroy matter, but meaning, tore open space like a wound. Time shuddered, stars dimmed, the surface of Velharn fractured, then folded inward, not in flame, not in rubble, but in forgetfulness. Whole cities collapsed without sound. Towers dissolved mid-shriek. The Sire's screamed towers shattered like glass memory. And for a moment, just one, the psychic silence was total. It had worked, until it didn't. On the cathedra, Lex stumbled as the floor quaked beneath him. Monitors spasmed, light twisted in unnatural hues. Across the void, Velharn's planetary mass held, but its core refused. "Captain," Lex choked, "we didn't delete it. We awakened something deeper." Kale, standing beside Mila at the war table, stared at the orbital readings. His voice dropped to a whisper. "It's not a single entity. The Sire. It's just one mouth in a choir." They thought the Sire was a predator, a solitary creature gorging on memory. But it was worse. It was a fragment of a much older infection, a seed, a root node. The screen towers weren't just broadcasts. They were beacons. And now that they'd tried to kill it, the choir was answering. Within hours, long-range sensors picked up anomalies. At the edges of known space, memory fractures, non-linear echoes from long-dead civilizations. Phantom fleets drifting through void corridors that no longer existed. The Sire wasn't retreating. It was calling its siblings, and the first to arrive came not through hyperspace, but through recollection. A distortion field opened beside. The cathedra, not a ship, but a momentary impossible moment from Earth's early diaspora. The fall of Io. A memory lost to history, witnessed now again, but twisted. A city aflame, but rebuilt wrong. Voices crying out names that had never existed. Lex, Mila barked. "What the hell are we looking at?" He turned, pale. "We're not seeing the future. We're not seeing the past. We're seeing trauma. Reborn. It's not just feeding anymore, it's fighting with what it's devoured." That night, 27 Deathworlder ships were lost without a single impact. No weapons, no boarding, just deletion. Survivors' last transmissions were maddening. "My mother's voice is calling me. From Saturn. Asterisk, I'm watching myself die in 12 different ways and I remember all of them. I'm inside my own funeral. The Sire's counterattack wasn't a fleet. It was remembrance weaponized. Back in the war chamber, the officers gathered. Faces worn. Some still bleeding from nose and ear. Psychic hemorrhage was rampant. Mila stood tall, but her voice was quiet. "They're not just here to stop us. They're here to become us. To wear us until we forget who we were." Kale slammed his hand on the table. "Then we burn them. We've got ember rounds, Eidolons, void charges. None of that works unless we understand what they are." Lex snapped. "They're not life. They're not machines. They're a disease of memory. And we just fed them an entire war." The room went silent. Then Mila spoke. "Then maybe we fight not with weapons, but with stories." She called for a new doctrine. Not one of deletion, but of reinvention. Each soldier received a new implant, a pulse memory stabilizer. It locked their core identity in neural stone, their pain, their joy, their reasons for fighting. It's like iron. No longer could the Sire twist their memories. Now, humanity would wield them. Mila's voice echoed through the fleet-wide transmission as the implants activated. "We are Deathworlders, born of ruin, tempered by extinction. You think memory is your weapon? We carry the pain of 1,000 broken worlds and we made it holy. Try to wear that." The next battle was fought not in space, but in the mind. As another memory creature breached orbit, a flickering mimic of old Earth's last sky citadel, Mila led the charge. But this time, when it reached into her mind to extract her regrets, It screamed, because it found not sorrow but defiance. She had encoded her sister's death, not as weakness, but as purpose. Her failure became her rage, her grief, her blade. One of the choirs shattered mid-attack, its form convulsing before it imploded. They could feed on sorrow, but not on meaning. Across the fleet, similar victories erupted. Rourke, whose whole unit had died on Ganymede, turned that memory into a war cry. Kale, who'd once abandoned his commander to save civilians, rewrote that pain into tactical resolve. Humanity was learning to weaponize its scars, not to erase the sire, but to corrupt it. But the choir was not finished. The next echo was not a fake memory, but a real one. A colony long lost. Ardain 3, its inhabitants walked the battlefield, very much alive, smiling, laughing, and one of them was Talia Voss. Mila froze, her weapon lowering. "Talia," she whispered. The figure stepped forward, eyes shimmering. "Sister, you don't have to fight. You can remember me. We can be whole again." Lex yelled through calms, "Captain, it's a deep mimic. Get out." But Mila didn't shoot. She stepped forward and whispered something only Talia would know. The mimic hesitated, and Mila shot it in the heart. The form spasmed, glitched, and collapsed. "I remember her," Mila said, "and that's why I won't let you become her." One by one, the Choyer's voices cracked. Memory had been their weapon. Now it was humanity's shield. But then came the final warning. Lex watched as multiple deep space relays shut down across Deathworlder sectors. A message appeared, ancient language, pre-contact era. Just 3 words, "Earth remembers, too." And then silence. We thought Earth was dead. Turns out, it just never forgot. No human had heard from Earth in over 90 years. Not since the final exodus, when the last fleets fled her poisoned skies and boiling oceans, leaving behind only Iron ruins, crumbling data cores, and the myth that she'd finally gone quiet. But now, across every Deathworlder ship, a signal pulsed. Old Earth encryption, unbreakable, undeniable. It carried no voice, no coordinates, just a single file. Lex cracked it. In seconds, his voice, usually calm, trembled. "It's a memory key, pre-singularity." Mila leaned in. "From who?" Lex stared at her. "From Earth." The file opened like a wound. Images flooded the command deck. Scorched cities, ash storms, broken towers rising from dead seas, and through it all, faces. Millions of them, unblinking, digital ghosts preserved. From Earth's last years, civilians, soldiers, children, elderly. Their eyes met the Deathworlder crew one by one. Then, finally, a voice, not a broadcast, a recorded will, to the stars beyond us. If you're hearing this, it means something found you, something ancient, something wrong. We tried to stop it. We failed, but not before we locked it behind. U.S., this was never a war. It was a containment. Earth was not lost. Earth was a prison. The bridge fell silent. Kale muttered. All this time, we left her behind thinking she was dead when she was guarding us. Lex expanded the feed. The data showed the origin of the Sire's root signal traced. Through Velhar, through the choir, through centuries of drifting trauma, right back to Earth's southern hemisphere. A subterranean vault beneath the ruins of New Johannesburg. The Deathworlders hadn't just answered a call. They'd opened the last lock, and Earth had awakened. Mila sat in silence for nearly a minute. Then she stood, plot a course. We returned to Sol. Kale stared. We'll never survive it. Earth's biosphere is still lethal. The orbitals are ruined. Hurry, I grid alone. We're not going to visit Earth, Mila said. We're going to forgive her. The cathedral broke into Sol space 3 days later. The fleet followed. No alarms, no defenses, just an ancient world turning slowly beneath them. Wreathed in dust and thunder, and something else watching, a signal pulse from orbit. Not from the satellite, from the moon itself, a network embedded in lunar stone, long dormant. Lex linked it through, frowning. It's waiting for us to finish the sequence. What sequence? Mila asked. Lex paused. Us. Earth say I didn't want passwords. It wanted memories. Each Deathworlder, one by one, was required to submit a neural imprint, not of battles, not of kills, but of what they remembered most about being human. A father's last hug, a child's laugh in a bunker, a lost song on a dead world. Mila went last. She placed her palm against the neural keyplate and whispered, "My sister, Talia Voss." She died believing someone had to stay behind. The moon pulsed green. The lock broke, and Earth breathed again. Below the clouds, a vault opened beneath New Johannesburg, massive, silent, alive. The cathedra descended alone. Inside the vault was not ruin, but revelation. Machines powered by empathy loops, singularity engines bound by purpose, and at its center, the Thanatos core, Earth's final weapon, a sphere of memory and matter, a construct designed to obliterate not just matter or consciousness, but context itself. Lex's eyes widened. This could erase the entire choir. Kale whispered, it could erase us. 2. Mila stepped forward, but only if we let it. She reached the interface. A voice spoke again, her own voice, recorded as a child. This is Mila Voss, age 8. If I ever come back here, it means I still remember who I am. The Thanatos core accepted her and activated. The stars above Velharn began to shudder. Across the galaxy, the choir responded violently. Their formless avatars screamed. Not in rage and terror. The core had begun unraveling their power. Not the choir howled across the stars. Because for the first time, it knew fear. The Thanatos core was awake. Below the scarred crust of old Earth, it pulsed like the last heartbeat of a dying god, silent, slow, deliberate, no heat, no sound, just an ever-growing field of conceptual gravity, devouring meaning itself. The choir tried to flee, but they could not flee from memory. In the void between systems, the sire's fragments reeled. Choir notes flickered out like snuff candles. Whole planets suddenly breathed of their mournful shadows. No more whispering ruins, no more dream specters, just silence. But that silence wasn't peace. It was the sound of retribution. On board the cathedra, now stationed in low orbit above Earth, the bridge was lit not by HUDs or weapons displays, but by raw thought feeds. The Thanatos core didn't operate like any known device. It didn't fire. It reminded, and the galaxy was starting to remember what it had buried. 7 choir echoes collapsed overnight. Lex reported, Velharn is no longer broadcasting. Collateral, Mila asked. Kel's voice was grim. 3 allied systems lost. Not from attack, just overwhelmed. They couldn't separate memory from present. The core's wave is too strong. Lex turned to her. We're fighting with the fabric of perception. Captain, one wrong move, and we'll erase ourselves. Mila Voss stood at the center of it all. Calm in a storm, made not of fire but of grief. Her armor bore no rank now, just a black emblem. A shattered world encircled by a ring of flame. She spoke quietly. We didn't come this far to become the thing we feared. We finished this with intention, not wrath. Kale looked up. You're saying we can aim the core? She nodded. Lex blinked. But it doesn't work like a weapon. It responds to memory, exactly. She said, we guide it with what we choose to remember. So they built a bridge not of circuitry, but a sacrifice. Every Deathworlder's ship, every mind still stable. Every soldier still breathing uploaded one final memory into the Thanatos stream. Not war, not victory, but the moment they chose to keep fighting. A child lifted from rubble, a friend's hand, trembling in farewell. A scream that meant someone lived long enough to feel it. These became the coordinates, and slowly, the core aligned. The choir struck back, one final time. They didn't send ships. They sent illusions. Entire sectors filled with false histories ancient. Earth cities, reborn and twisted. Lost relatives, lovers, whole childhoods replayed. One Deathworlder cruiser self-destructed, rather than fire on a mimic of its captain's mother. Others followed. Some wept. Some broke. But others held, because they had learned the truth. The choir could only use what you gave it. So Mila Voss gave it something new. She entered the link herself. Lex screamed as her vitals flatlined. Captain down. But Kale watched the Thanatos feed and smiled. She's inside it. He whispered. She's guiding it from the core, and within the memory void of the Thanatos sphere. Mila Voss stood beneath a sky that didn't exist. She faced the choir's heart not as a soldier, but as a soul. All around her, it whispered, we remember everything. We are the wound that never heals. We are the scream that echoes forever. She stepped forward, unarmed. I know. She held out a memory, not her sister's death, but her sister's laughter. The choir shrieked, you will not bury us in light. No, Mila said, I'll burn you with it. And then she opened every Deathworlder memory at once. A tidal wave of love, regret, bravery, loss, not to destroy the choir, but to drown it. Back on the cathedra, the core detonated not in flame, but in remembrance. A lightless flare of meaning swept across the Choya's networks, not erasing them, but making them feel. All their stolen memories became real, not fragments, not loops, lives, and they couldn't bear it. Across the stars, the choir collapsed, their minds shattered by the very thing they had fed upon for eons, empathy. Kale slumped at his console. They're gone. It's over. Lex whispered, no, it's not, because Mila Voss's body remained still, and the core was still, glowing. She had made the final choice, one memory from many. Her voice echoed once more across the fleet comm, strong, defiant. Tell the stars we remembered. Tell them we chose to, and that was enough. Then the core dimmed, and the silence that followed was peaceful. The sire fell not by blade nor bomb, but by the one thing it could never mimic, the human soul. The stars mourned in silence. What had once been a galaxy screaming with the stolen voices of 1,000 worlds now shimmered, quietly, like a battlefield swept clean by time. The cathedra drifted over Earth, its hull scorched, its crew hollow-eyed, and its bridge missing the presence of one who had become myth before her death. Mila Voss was gone, but she had taken the choir with her. Kale stood before the central display, flickering with telemetry that now read 0 across all choir resonance frequencies. The enemy, if one could even call it that, was gone, not destroyed, not imprisoned, transcended. Lex was silent, hands trembling as he looped the last echo from the Thanatos core again and again. It was just her voice, no blood, no defiance, just her final truth. We never forgot who we were. That was our weapon. That was our victory. He turned to Kale. It's over. Kale didn't respond. He just looked at the black patch on his armor, the one that used to bear his commander's crest. Then he spoke. No, it's not. In the silence of galactic peace, something dangerous begins to grow. Emptiness. Worlds that had been hollowed by the choir for generations were now truly empty. No memory specters, no false suns, no puppet screams, just vast graveyards under foreign skies. Velharn was quiet, too quiet, and the Deathworlder fleets, those forged in fire and forged to fight, had no enemy left to hold them together. A new war threatened to rise, not of guns, but of purpose. At Earth's surface, deep within the Thanatos vault, the core pulsed faintly one final time. Then, impossibly, it opened. Kale was there. He alone descended beneath the ancient bones of humanity's homeworld, where even the air was sacred. His boots echoed through a place no human had stepped in generations, and within the vault, he found it, her armor, empty, but next to it, something else, a message, handwritten, unmistakably hers. If you're reading this, I made it back. Shock rippled through the fleet. She lived. Lex demanded. No vitals, no trace. The medic insisted. Then where the hell is she? Kale only smiled. She isn't here. She isn't anywhere, and that's the point. He turned the note over. The other side bore 3 words, scrawled in the same dark ink. I remember you. That was all the proof they needed. Mila Voss had done what no one thought possible. She hadn't just survived the core. She had become it, not as a weapon, but as a keeper. All across the galaxy, remnants of the choir began to resurface, not as enemies, but as witnesses. Twisted, half-born minds began to heal. Species enslaved by memory sickness regained identity. Planets once lost in psychic storms began to reawaken. The sire had infected the galaxy with trauma, but Mila had infected. It was something far more dangerous, hope. The Council of Remaining Worlds convened for the first time in 100 years. Humans were given a seat they'd never claimed before, not as refugees, as leaders. Kale stood before the gathered powers, alien, human, synthetic, and delivered a speech that would echo through history. We were born on a dying world, shaped by fire, war, and the weight of our own memories. We were hunted, broken, and haunted, but we never forgot who we were, and that is what makes us Deathworlders. Not strength, not fury, memory. We bleed, and we remember why. They voted unanimously to enshrine the Voss Accords, a galactic pact, one not of power, but of remembrance. Every world that signed would commit to carrying its past truthfully, its horrors, its victories, its losses. No more silencing trauma. No more rewriting history, because that was how the sire began, and that was how it would never return. Lex would later say, in a rare speech of his own, we feared the things that fed on our sorrow, but we learned at the end that sorrow becomes sacred when you refuse to let it define you. Mila Voss didn't destroy the sire. She gave it something it couldn't consume: humanity. There was no body, no funeral pyre, just a statue, carved from meteoric iron, set upon Earth's highest surviving peak. A lone figure, helmet off, hand extended not in warning but in welcome. The inscription read, "She remembered us." So we will never forget her. But in the far reaches of the galaxy, in places no map dares mark, sometimes travelers still hear whispers, not echoes of the sire, but of a woman in black armor, walking forgotten ruins, carrying a torch of memory in one hand and offering peace with the other. Some say it's a ghost. Others say she became the galaxy's conscience. But those who know, they call her what she always was, Deathworlder. There were no stars left to conquer, only stories left to tell. 100 years later, children on distant moons still whisper her name when the lights flicker. Mile of Oz. They don't speak it out of fear. They speak it like a prayer. Earth is alive again. Not the blue jewel of old, but something different, wilder, wiser. Great cities have not returned. Forests stretch where monuments once stood. Oceans now cover what was once war-ravaged land. And at the heart of it all is the vault. Not locked, not hidden, open. A monument, yes, but more. A temple of memory. Pilgrims come not to worship, but to confess. Inside, there are no altars, just light, just silence, just a single echo of a voice that once changed the stars. We remember. That's what makes us human. In the archives of the United Galactic Concord, a single thread connects every reformed world. The Voss protocols, taught in every academy, recited by every fleet, burned into the code of every AI born after the fall of the choir. Never erase pain, never forget truth, never let sorrow become a weapon. Those who violate these principles are not met with war, they are met with a story. The cathedra still sails. Its outer hull carries scars too deep for time to polish away. Its command seat remains empty, always, not out of grief, out of honor. Kale commands now older, quieter. His hair is gray, but his eyes haven't dimmed. He doesn't speak of the war much, but when asked about Mile of Oz, he only says this: "She showed us that memory is more than a chain. It's our engine." Lex never left Earth again. He lives near the old equator line, tending to a garden that grows from the ashes of old launch fields. He teaches children how to write code with heart in it, how to make machines remember compassion. Every year, on the day of the Ember's silence, he reads her final message aloud, not for ceremony, but for the new generation who never knew her war. She didn't die to end the enemy. She lived so we'd never become one, and far beyond, the edge of civilized space, where ships rarely go and signals fade into cosmic breath, something lingers, not the choir, something new. Witnesses have seen a black figure walking among the ruins of lost colonies, somehow untouched by time. No weapon, no need for one. She leaves only a mark behind, a simple human handprint, pressed into stone, sometimes charred, sometimes glowing, always human. Galactic historians call what happened the quiet reclamation. No parade, no victory broadcast, no throne built atop enemy bones, just planets, healing, species once hollow rediscovering art, story, music. Some say the Sire still exists in broken fragments, scattered like ash across time. But it doesn't speak anymore, because now we do. On Velharn, what was once a cursed world now blooms. It was the last world to be re-inhabited. Deathworlders volunteered to go first, not with weapons but with names. They walked its broken streets reciting names of the dead, one by one. Each time they spoke a name, the land trembled, but not in resistance, in recognition. Velharn wasn't a tomb anymore. It had become a eulogy. And so it is remembered that when the stars cried out for help, when the galaxy prayed for salvation from a voice that devoured meaning, it wasn't angels who came. It wasn't gods. It was us, humans, born on a dying world, forged in extinction, carriers of pain, yes, but also of love, of defiance, of memory. We were the nightmare the choir could not swallow. We were the scar that refused to fade. And in the end, we were the only thing left standing. Not because we were strongest, but because we were true. So now, on the edge of every fleet vessel, engraved in metal that outlasts time, are 5 words. Let them remember we endured. And somewhere, perhaps in a place beyond names, beyond time, a woman in obsidian armor walks among the stars, not as a ghost, but as a guardian, She does not lead armies. She does not carry a flag. She just remembers for all of us, for those who came before her, for those yet to come, for the stars themselves. And that day, the day the choir fell every corner of the galaxy, learned what it meant to be human. We hurt, we heal, we remember, and we never surrender. The end.